And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Marketing Gem. And glad that you can join us for the show. Following from last week's show, we talked about an outlined process of methods used when launching a new product or service. One of the key elements identified was that for the vast majority of products and services launched each year that successfully launched and survived, it was necessary to thoroughly research the market sectors or product service or services that you will be selling. This research stage is often overlooked or poorly conceived. And how much, if any, does the research process differ if the product is a totally new concept rather than an extension to an existing one? So just how can and when do SMEs research a market or a product's needs? And is it just a case of Googling and typing in a few search engines and spending 5 minutes doing a quick internet search, or is it better to use some other search engine, some other search methods rather, and market research companies to look at and evaluate the product or service on your behalf? And when is the best time to do it? Is it before you even start product development, during product development, or at the end when you launch a test market? To discuss the best way to research a new product or service, I'm joined today by three of our regular members of the Marketing Gem. That's Catherine Baldwin, Jonathan Darby, and Kevin Lynch. And I'm going to start with Catherine. Hi, Catherine, and welcome once again to the show. Catherine runs CB Graphics, a design consultancy based in Watford, with many of the customers, and is regularly briefed by SMEs who want to produce printed materials and promotional materials, often for new products and services. It was used to asking other SMEs how they develop their new products and services. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. And you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, this is an interesting topic, isn't it? Particularly I think with January, we're in January, people are making New Year's resolutions, companies are making New Year's resolutions, looking ahead to the future, perhaps doing something brand new, or perhaps doing something that they already do, but in a different way. But it's really a chance to have a look at what that idea is, how it's going to work. So you need to do a bit of research and have a look at the sort of market that you're heading into. So I'm looking forward to discussing some of those things with the group today.
Okay, and our second expert is Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, hopefully I've got my microphone unmuted this time, and I just realised I've been wobbling around, so I was probably grabbing the focus unintentionally. So anyway, despite all those things, I can't believe you still have me on the show, Diane. So looking forward to sharing some of my experience on use of research in a large corporate with lessons that can be learned that are applicable for SMEs.
Sounds fantastic. And finally, we're joined by Jonathan Darby, and Jonathan was working for a vast range of some of the clients for some of the world's biggest advertising agencies. Was often involved in the research stages of new products and developments as they identified new markets for products and services of the agency's clients. Some of the clients included people like Canon and Canon cameras, that is. And that was not just in the UK, but across Europe when they were launched. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that we are talking about SMEs, so I won't go into the highfalutin areas of market research and the sort of detail that some major corporates will go into. What we've got to do is set ourselves some realistic targets that will give us a good picture of what the opportunity is and what are the things that your product or service has to tick before it's viable to go forward and be successful.
No, I agree with that. There are parallels that can be learned. Despite the lack of budgets, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, what we don't want to do is have people sort of going, oh, but I haven't been and spoken to a major national market research company, because you can't afford to, mate. So be realistic, but set yourself some worthwhile objectives. And if it's about validating that there is actually a marketable idea out there, and also validating that there's enough money out there to make it worthwhile. But we'll cover that as we go through the session. Anyway, thank you for inviting me to take part.
Okay, that's great. So, actually, Jonathan, we'll start with you. So, I mean, you often talk about the marketing audit, and you talk about, and that includes a vast element of research about making sure that things are right. So, why is research so important? Let's just cover that base off first.
Well, in this circumstance, you're in that situation whereby the bits that are really important at this stage, so initially, prior, I suppose, to your marketing audit, just sit down and do some desk research and try and work out what the likely size of the market is for the product or service that you're offering. Now, if you're a one-man band, you're very unlikely to be sitting there on a resource that says, oh, this could be global and I could have 500 million people buying something. So set yourself some realistic targets. What can I actually do? What can I service? How big is the potential marketplace if I get it right? Once, you know, so those sorts of things, so you can sketch out a picture of who is it you want to talk to and what is it that they are going to like about your idea, your product or service. And then from there, you've got a better way of validating the information and sort of asking yourself questions about how am I going to monetize this idea, and therefore is it worth pursuing, or am I just going to get blown out of the market because someone else can do it at a quarter of the cost with none of the problems. But you've got to sort of do some basic desk research before you then go out and talk to people who you are likely to be selling to. But that's the other side of it, from my point of view, is once you've worked out that there is something out there that you can go for, go and talk to the people who are going to be the most likely people to pay for it. But I'll leave it at that point.
Okay, so Kevin, how do you find these people who are likely to pay for your product or service?
Well, that's a good question, and the thing I would say about research, first and foremost, is it is better. I can't remember who said this originally, but it is better to have a good answer, a wrong answer to a good question, than the right answer to the wrong question. So when you're doing research, what are the questions you're actually asking? And are they the right questions? And are they going to take you and the product or service to the place they want to be? In terms, once you've kind of those big goals, those big kind of questions settled, and that I definitely think this is one of those processes where it's really worth committing these sort of things to documents that you go back and say, I thought this at this time, but based on this, I know, and just check how you're thinking to move along. In terms of the best way to do the research, I think you start informally. People have been talking about, John was saying about using national research agencies and things like that. They have a very specific place to do. They're offering a business service to large corporates, but the fundamentals are always affordable. The company that I worked for, most of our market research was conducted in seminars where we would bring in key customers and talk them through our thinking. We would pay for their expenses for their lunch and their coffee and stuff like that, and we would have structured sessions with them. And the other point about that sort of thing was it was a 360-degree thing, so all the major functions of the company were there, so that everyone was, because in a lot of organizations this is called the customer's voice, so even people from finance and customer service, those people were all part of the dialogue, exploring with the customer what they're interested in. So you don't have to go to all that expense, but do bring the whole 360-degree element of what you're doing. If you have a fantastic idea, for, let's say, a new red hot chili sauce, then cook up some batches of it and take it out on the streets and ask people what they think. if you're going to be really brave about it, compare your chili sauce with a market leader and tomato ketchup and see which ones people prefer. Incidentally, that's a really hard thing to do. Most people can't compare three tastes. They can only compare two. Anyway, I'll let some others speak.
Okay, so Catherine, when people come to you and they say we've got this new product we're about to launch and everything, how do they explain how they've got to that to that stage? Do they talk about the research and that they've done, or is it just sort of like, well, we come up with this great new idea and we're just launching it in hope?
I would always assume and hope that when someone's coming to me to actually launch their product, that they've already done the research. Otherwise, they could be spending a whole lot of money on literature and stationery for business that's never going to take off. Yeah, I think there needs to be a lot of thought gone into what the product is, whether it's a product or an idea or a service that you're providing. The thing that I first thought of was, if you think about the program Dragon's Den, what are the sorts of questions get asked on that program? You know, they're asking these entrepreneurs, what is your idea? What is it? How is it different? Have you looked at other people with that similar idea? And if it's similar, how are you doing it differently? Are you doing it better? Are you doing it quicker? Are you doing it cheaper? So you have to have those sorts of ideas in mind first of all. You need to know that there's a marketplace for whatever it is that you either want to produce or offer. For instance, if you wanted to set up a fast food shop in North Watford at the moment, you'd probably actually think again, because there's quite a few of them there already. So have a look around and see who else is doing what it is that you want to do, and take on board some feedback that actually says, yeah, it's a good idea, but maybe not here. Or you know, if you're producing that wonderful batch of chili sauce, people might say, yeah, it's okay, but there's quite a few of them around. How are you going to do something different? Or where are you going to put your product that's not just on a supermarket shelf that's going to get lost in amongst everybody else's? Are you actually going to sell it to somebody like Nando's, get them to brand it, and you know, receive a commission from them? So it's a matter of thinking what it is you're doing, how are you going to make it stand out, and how you're going to achieve those things, and those things have to come through research, and you know, the guys are right, make some notes, go back on those notes, do your research online. All those tools are free. Ask friends, family, colleagues, and you know, trusted customers that you have already, get their input as well. All those sorts of things can be done for free, but it's valuable information that you really need.
Okay, so Jonathan, when should people be doing marketing or market research or product research? Is it a case of just doing it all at the beginning, or is it, you know, as Kevin alluded to, you know, you make some trial batches up and you see how people react to it, or is it a case of you have to do it at both of those stages?
You have to do it continuously, really, but certainly the desk research, the quantifying the size of the market, you can do up front. The going out and showing people examples of the sorts of things that you're talking about, you can do up front. But you know, once you've actually got a physical product and you can demonstrate the benefit of the product, and you can also describe how it's differentiated from other people's products, and that's key, then you continually go back. So when you're going through the launch phase, every 4 weeks probably go out, ask another group of people essentially the same questions. Each time you go out and you've gone through your set of questions and you've sort of got some feedback, you might then think about, well, actually, maybe I need to change the way I'm asking some of these questions, because I'm not actually getting any insights out of these people. All I'm getting is yes, no, or, well, you know, someone else might buy it, but I've never paid for it, and things like that. And actually what you want to start to do is delve a bit more into how and why people are reacting to the product. But that's, if you like, an ongoing iterative process. And in an ideal world, you'll always be talking to existing customers and improving the product in terms of their perception of what you're doing. So that should anyway be a part of your everyday business, is picking up the phone to people who know buy your product and like your product, and making sure that they are continually, effectively being your advocate in the marketplace and recommending you to other people. But anyway, that aside, my notes were the desk research is the concept in any way, shape or form a differentiated product, or is it just another Me Too? If you're the only person in Watford High Street offering a guarantee, let's say, of when McDonald's were in their early days, they had a deal whereby if you went into their restaurant and you didn't get your hot patty meal served to you within, I think it was a minute, you didn't have to pay for it. And that was their differentiation. You want to talk about fast food, this is fast food. Fine. Old hat, old idea, we can move on to other things. But, if you're going to be a fast food in a fast food marketplace, make sure that you're faster than everyone else, or make sure your quality of food is better than everyone else, but have something that makes you different. And that sort of research you can do by walking down the street and talking to people who are walking out of other people's fast food outlets and saying, what is it that you not like about this, and what is it you don't like about it? What would make this experience better for you? Those sorts of questions. So there's some of it that you can do up front. When you're actually in the marketplace, clearly, you're probably, as a target audience yourself, if you come up with the idea, your chances are you're going to be pretty well in the middle of that potential target audience. So you want to then go out and say, right, so I will approach people who are likely to find the same sort of concept appealing. But it's going to be a bit of trial and error. It's not all going to be, oh, yes, everyone who drives a Ford Mondeo is going to go out and buy my type of hot sauce. They won't. However, everyone who drives a Ford Mondeo might go out and buy windscreen wipers for a Ford Mondeo at some stage. So, there's got to be a way of being able to say, I can differentiate these people, I can identify them as a potential audience, and then I can go and talk to them. I think one of the things that we haven't spoken about yet, there are quite a lot of online tools that you can write questions in and then distribute as a questionnaire and just get some quantitative feedback from people rather than talking to them face to face. When you're doing things on a very small scale and you haven't got a great deal of time, sometimes doing that is better than walking up to strangers and trying to ask them questions. But there's a place for all the various different ways of doing market research. Just remember that keep it in scale with your ambitions and your resources, because you can spend an awful lot of time and money on research and actually never get around to using it.
No, I think that's a really important point. I was actually going to following on from your point about some online tools and also the point that Kevin made earlier about asking the right kind of question. Kevin, what are some of these tools? I mean, SurveyMonkey is one that springs to mind, and there are other sorts of similar things out there. What other kind of search line engines are there? Or survey type engines are there out there that you might be able to network or email your contacts with networks with?
Well, SurveyMonkey is the market leader. It's quite expensive. There are some other ones. You've got a free version of SurveyMonkey that will let you ask up to 10 questions. It's very simplistic. They really encourage you to go towards a plan that will cost you about £400 a year. At that point, you can begin to ask some serious market research. You have conditional logic so that you can, if you have some ideas, you can drill down into it. You can do all sorts of things with it. The issue I have with SurveyMonkey is, and those kind of online research tools is, and this is very much in the fore at the moment, is it's the quality and size of your sample. So in the news this week we have the whole thing about how the opinion pollsters got the election wrong, and basically there were no shy Tories. All the Tories were out having a good time. And the only people that were responding to the survey were economically inactive, housebound Labour. Gosh, that sounds so so harsh, but that's the brutality of it. And basically, when you conduct a survey and you want to get it right, you have to reach all your sample at the same time. And what had happened to those guys was they needed a sample of 400 random people, but really what they should have had was a sample of 4,000, and they should have been tracking that to make sure that it was representative anyway. So that's the thing about research, if you do it right, you'll get the right answers. So things like SurveyMonkey, I think, are a little bit illusory in the sense that the people you really want to respond will not respond. The people that the decision makers you really need to answer, you'll need to spend time and effort to track them down. And that is, quite frankly, what it is to be an entrepreneur in your business, is to find those people and get them to provide some input, and then based on their input, give them an offer that they really want.
So, okay, so you said not SurveyMonkey, but I mean, is it a case of, say, monitoring sites like Streetwise or certain Facebook groups, or I mean, how?
I mean, that kind of research is organic, but at this point, you want something that's very goal-oriented. So, you have the goal, you figure out how you're going to get there, just figure it out. This is turning to be a little bit cyclic. It's just, how do you survey people? You just survey people. Beyond that, you have apply some intelligence to say, how are we going to get the sample to respond? What are the right questions that we need to ask them? How do we get a truthful answer to that question? And look online. For example, if you want to ask people, are you a racist? No one will ever answer the question, are you a racist? But if you say, in my street, do you know any racists? And if everybody in the street says yes, then you conclude everyone in the street is racist. So you don't just say, will you buy this product for £10? You've got to ask the right question, and that question is, it comes from a context of what your product is, what the research, what your gut feeling on the market is. Take all that stuff on board, just do it. See what comes out of it. And, I was making this point to Jonathan yesterday. There was a thing that we've been working on together, and we were going, it's not that good, it's not that good. Sat down last night, went through it for an hour, realized it's perfectly fine. Just need a little. I thought it was like, throw it out, start again, it was so bad. Jonathan was like, no, we just need, and we identified 10 little tweaks, and we think we're in a good place with it. I think that's a good point to hand over to Jonathan, really.
Well, we look forward to
I think Catherine's been desperate to speak.
So the trouble is, half the points I want to make relate to about 10 minutes ago, so I don't want to go backwards. I was going to say on the subject of market research, an interesting thing I saw the other day, or I received the other day, was I'm a member of a group called Show Film First, who offer free tickets to review latest films and things in the cinema. And on the back of one of their mailings, there was just a little line at the bottom that said, would you be prepared to be part of either an online or a face-to-face marketing group? So I just sort of ticked the box and sent it off. So there's simple little things actually that you can send out on mailings and things that you do anyway, that actually can start building a bit of an audience for when you do want to perhaps do some market research on a particular product or idea in the future. So again, sort of using the social media tools at your disposal, actually you can start building a bit of a database of people online that you can use. Another thing that I was going to say a little bit further back, not just about whether it's a good idea and all the rest of it, before you launch a particular product, whether it's anything to do with health products, health foods and things like that, what you would actually need to look at as well are independent testing. People want to see results, they want to see that the claims that you're making on something actually work, as well as perhaps an accreditation and perhaps a medical endorsement of some sort. If you're promoting a product that says it's going to make your hair grow back if you're bald, you need to be able to back up those claims. So it's important to actually have those things in place before actually taking a product to market. People want to know that something works, and even in some other areas, if you want to open up, I'm going back to restaurants again. You want to open up a restaurant selling Caribbean food. Is there a need for Caribbean food in your area? Do you have the proper safety, health checks and things like that? People want to see that everything is in place before putting their trust in what it is that you're talking about.
I think trust is quite an important point, isn't it, Jonathan?
Trust is huge, but it's also a given. There's all these things that you must have, and it's nice to have. But essentially, any product, there has to be a degree of trust. If you're selling an app, there has to be the trust that it's been tested probably by Google and or by Apple, and it's not going to make the device you're running it on fail. So there's always a degree of trust. Kevin and I will disagree necessarily about how ready and how right a product should be at launch. My view is that it has to do one thing really, really well, and they will forgive the other bits and pieces it might not be very good at. But it's got to be the core thing that you're selling that it does really well. I'm going to go back to research again. I talked about desk research and using databases and information that's published, say, on the internet, and then going out and doing surveys face-to-face. And then the other sort of way you have to look at this is the whole thing about quantitative surveys. So the sort of thing like SurveyMonkey, and where that went wrong is in terms of not having a big enough sample to ask a question of. And that's quantitative. And within quantitative, you then get into this whole area of statistically whether or not that's a very good look there, Catherine. Just as well you're not on live. Sorry. The quantitative data, and when you're doing that, there are a whole set of rules about that that tell you whether or not you can read it. But if you go out with a quantitative survey and you ask 20 people in your target audience, would you be interested in buying this product or service from my company, and all 20 of them turn around and say yes, then there's a fairly good chance that you've got a working proposition. If you go out and ask them 20 people and 8 people say yes and 12 people say no, the answer is it's probably about 50-50. Half of the people you approach will be quite interested. So that's a scalable thing. The other side of it is, having done the quantitative, the thing with the hard numbers, the thing that says there are 1 billion people out there who will buy fresh water in bottles, there's the other side of it is the qualitative, where you actually start sitting down with groups of people who you want to be people who are familiar with your brand or with the kind of product or service that you're going to go out and try and market, and you talk to them. And you can talk to them in groups or you can talk to them individually. Again, it's a scalable thing. If you talk to them in groups, and it's effectively referred to as a focus group, do be careful that one person in the sample of people you're talking to isn't just leading the whole conversation. So you might get, you're talking to a bunch of housewives with children, and you could have one mum who hates your brand and 6 other mums who are quite keen on it, and she can turn the entire audience round if you don't monitor and adjust behaviour in the right way during the meeting. A lot of things like focus groups are conducted under film so that everyone who reads the results afterwards can actually see how and why people behaved in the way that they did. And sometimes you just have to take the whole focus group and say, actually, that's got to be trashed because one person took the whole thing over and it became his or her show. So every piece of research is fraught with problems. in a sense, the best thing you can do is, if you can afford it, go and speak to someone who's a specialist in the field and get their input. The quality of the questions. You can ask a leading question and it will completely distort the end result of a questionnaire. There was a great example of that, if you like, the HS2 survey around, between London and Birmingham. And if you actually went away and you read all the questions that HS2 wanted the people who are going to be, if you like, affected by HS2, virtually every question was a leading question. Virtually every question was around the lines of, this is going to be a magnificent benefit to everybody who lives in the southeast of England. No, it isn't. But that's the way they actually started to frame every question. And they're sort of sitting there going, well, everyone came round and they all said negative things about it. We can't understand why they did that, because we were putting a nice gloss on it. But you don't ask leading questions. You ask simple questions in a clear and concise manner, and if you get confused responses to those questions, one of the things it tends to tell you is that question wasn't clear enough. But don't write questions that lead to an inevitable answer, because then essentially your research is completely wasted.
Yeah, no,
it is a very difficult area.
I think that's a really good point. Catherine, I mean, quite often though, the research is, you've taken part in research and you speak to lots of companies about their research efforts and products. But quite often, if the question is badly framed, the answer that is given is often quite flippant, isn't it? Because the person who's answering the question can be quite dismissive of the poor questionnaire.
Yes, I mean, I think you have to be careful when you're putting questions together, like Jonathan said. You have to be careful in how you phrase questions. You want to try and get the best out of people, whether that's a negative for the product or service or a positive. You want some honest feedback. So yeah, phrasing the questions in the right way. And this is very often when you, I'm sure we've all filled in surveys of some sort, and very often you'll sort of find yourself ticking a box and thinking, haven't they just asked me that in another question? Sometimes there will be a need to sort of rephrase a question, ask it in a different way, and sometimes you can get a different answer. People think about things in terms of priorities of words in a sentence in a different way. So very often it's a useful tactic to rephrase something, put it in a different context, and sometimes get a different answer, which of course can then be a bit of a nightmare in terms of collating the information. But it's an interesting way of getting people to think about what the question is. Some people, when they're filling in surveys, will assume that they've read something. Oh, they're asking me that, or they're asking me that. When in actual fact, that's not what the question says. So yeah, clear and concise, but sometimes shaking it up a bit can be useful as well. One other thing that I was going to move on to very briefly, it was mentioned before about the order in which to do things and making sure that budgets are in order in terms of products, new ideas, and all the rest of it. And something that occurred to me when I was doing some research about all of this was making sure that you didn't blow your whole budget on a project launch. Very often, a failing of a product the fate can be sealed on it immediately after a product launch. Everything's geared up for the big day, product's gone into the market, and people have run out of resources for continuing research, development, and all the rest of it on that particular product, and the money runs out. So actually budgeting for all these different parts of bringing a product to market are important.
Jonathan, I mean, we've talked about some of the dangers and pitfalls and whys and wherefores of research and everything, but it can actually bring benefits, can't it? I mean, it can stop you spending an awful lot of money later, or it might even identify a new area that you hadn't thought of where your product or service might be able to operate in. Again,
that's dependent on trying to make sure you ask the right types of the question of the right types of people. You can discover, with the whole process of developing insights, is that you go out and you watch people's behaviour and you speak to people and you catch people after they've just bought a very similar product to the one you're going to launch, and you ask them questions about What is it that appeals to them? Why do they want to buy that? If I offered you something very similar to it at the same price, but it had, I don't know, one of the classics many years ago was I worked on the launch of Lurpak Spreadable. And in a previous life, I've been responsible for the media and a lot of the activity around an organisation called the Butter Information Council. Now, one thing I knew, absolutely dead certain, is if we offered a butter that you could spread straight from the fridge, it would virtually overnight double the sales of butter in the UK, because that was the biggest gripe that housewives ever had. Well, I've got to go and make the sandwiches for my old man, or whatever it was, but you get the thing out of the fridge and it's a big solid lump, and you put it onto a piece of bread and it rips the bread to pieces, so that's no fun. And I don't want to get a ½ pound of butter out of the fridge, stick it in the microwave and turn it into a slush, because I can't then do anything with that afterwards. I have to throw it away. Anyway, so it was fairly obvious that when they turned around to me and said, look, we've come up with this thing and it spreads straight from the fridge and it does this and it does that, do you think it's going to be a success? And I said, yes, it will. It just depends on how big a success you want it to be. Similarly, if you turn around to someone and said, you know, I've got a pound of butter, and will it sell better if I put organic on the side of it? And I've got all the certification to demonstrate I can do it. Yes, it will, because people want to have the doubt and, if you like, the trust reaffirmed that this product is what I wanted and it's good for me and it's got, you know, organic credentials. So some of these things are, in a sense, reinforcements, but you will only really find out the right ones and the wrong ones by going through and talking to people who are in your marketplace and who are likely to purchase it. That part of it I can't emphasize too much. Just doing a completely bland survey monkey where you don't know how many people are going to be in your target market, how many aren't, will probably be completely misleading to you on the launch of a new product. But if you've gone out and you've sort of done a survey monkey and you've asked your 3 questions, let's say 10 questions, and you've suddenly found yourself with 50% of the respondents saying, I would be interested in a product, and 50% saying, I wouldn't be, and you can then identify the 50% who would be interested, what their attitude and mind is, or who they are, or some piece of it that you can then go back and re-question. Then you can sort of say, okay, I now have 100 people or 200 people who've already indicated that they actually have an active interest in this market area and are likely to purchase if the right product comes along. And then I can ask them another series of questions that will get closer to telling me how likely they are to purchase an overall concept, what they're likely to substitute it from. So they may have been buying margarine, then they're going to buy butter. I don't know. They might be buying an app or a service somewhere, and they'll say, well, I would consider swapping to a better one because it gives me it gives me something that I can't get at the moment. The trouble is, we're talking about concepts. It's horses for courses. That's part of the reason why you need to go and speak to someone who's done research and surveys before and find out what is relevant to the marketplace you're talking to. But there are methods that you can use to refine your audience and then ask them more detailed questions all the way through the process until you're actually on the launch. And then once you've launched, continue to go back to them and ask them questions along the lines of, if you're using the product or service, what improvements could you see us making to this that would give you greater satisfaction? You know, how valuable is this product or service to you? Now, it won't say, oh, it's worth £25 a month to me, because people don't tell the truth about what they're willing to pay for anything anyway. But it can give you an indication of what you might be able to monetize the product for over time. It's an immensely complex area, really, in fairness.
Just jumping back to one thing you said about listening to other people in the marketplace. That's absolutely true. I remember one instance on the last the last series of The Apprentice. There was a lady who wanted to launch an app. Now, absolutely convinced and said all the way along that she would be able to launch this app with a allotted amount of money and that it would be a huge success. And it was only actually when they got to the final episode, or the episode before the final episode, that she was told by app manufacturers, absolutely not possible. They simply haven't got enough money. There needed to be a whole injection of extra money gone into it. But she'd assumed that actually it would have been enough right up to that point, and it threw a whole spanner in the works in terms of funding. So it's incredibly important to talk to some experts about it, even if you're not actually engaging professional services. Talk to other people who've done something in a similar field, and actually gain some insight into and the knowledge about what it is that you think you know about. That actually, there might be some issues thrown up that you haven't foreseen, and can actually really pull the brakes on what it is you're trying to achieve. So listen to some others, get some insight.
Okay, well, I think this is obviously an immensely complicated subject and immensely involved, and both Jonathan, Kevin, and Catherine have highlighted some of the pitfalls and that sort of thing. Very briefly, Kevin's had to disappear. We've got some technical issues with the line with him. Jonathan, what would be the one thing that you would get people to do if they're going to be doing some research? What's the one thing they must get right above all else?
They've just got to get it all right. I mean, it's easy. I don't really want to. That is an impossible question in a sense. I think the key thing is that get the best support and help in getting yourself to research the product that you can afford on the run up to it. I think my tip of the week in terms of this, and it goes back to what Catherine has been saying, is effectively whatever anyone tells you is the budget that you need for doing the job, make sure you've got 100% contingency, because there's nothing more disheartening than going away, doing your first bit of research, and then suddenly discovering that actually all the assumptions that you'd based your business plan on don't exist, and you're going to have to go and start from scratch again. Having said that, it sounds like I'm being completely bizarre, but please don't be dissuaded from trying to do this kind of thing. And there will be eureka moments where you sit there and go, well, even if it blows out and I lose everything on this, some of this has been absolutely amazing, a hell of a learning curve. It's too easy to sound totally pessimistic about it, but there are too many success stories out there to ignore the opportunity to go and try something new and different, and be disruptive, but also make sure you're differentiating yourself from other people and other products and services. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Catherine can come and give us something.
Catherine, at the risk of asking the impossible question to you, what would be your one tip, the one thing that people do have to get right when they're researching?
Well, I'm going to cheat slightly. My one tip would be to actually have a look at the research that I dug up when I was researching this program, actually. Have a look at the Harvard Business Review, their article on why most product launches fail. It's written by Joan Schneider and Julie Hall. I'll post the link up online. It basically gives you a whole load of information into pre-launching a product, launch phase, and beyond. And it's a whole list of tips, tricks, and actually not so much tricks, it's just plain common sense, to be honest. And it's all about how to make something successful, what the pitfalls are, what you really can do that's incredibly common sense, very logical. I'm also going to post up, I found some classic product failures, and a lot of these are to do with lack of research, lack of asking an existing customer base. I'm going to mention one in particular, which was Coors, who, as most people know, produced beer. A few years ago, they produced a spring water, which was an absolute flop, because what they hadn't realised that most of their drinkers actually like alcohol and not water at all. So simple product failures like that. I'm going to post those up as well. My parting comment would be, actually, just as Jonathan's was, don't be put off. Be brave, be bold, but be informed.
Right, well, it sounds to me as if you've both combined the tip of the week and the tip for marketing research in one. But I'll ask you in a moment what your general tip of marketing this week is. But first of all, I'd like to remind people watching the Marketing Gem, which is Link for Growth TV production. You can get in touch with us via Twitter at the Marketing Gem. That's at the Marketing Gem, which you can see below me. It will also appear on the end board at the end of the show. Very briefly, Catherine, what would be your one tip of the week?
Well, you're right, I had combined it. Now I'm thinking of something else. Actually, I'm thinking of something else that we didn't manage to touch on. But it was assessing alternative markets, which is an interesting one. If you've got a product, I'm thinking very specifically of a young chap I had the fortune to meet a few years ago as part of the marketing at the Michael Green Foundation, a charity that's all about healthy eating, diet and fitness, all the rest of it. This young lad had a stall alongside ours at a school fair, and he was selling juices. Healthy smoothie juices made from nothing but vegetables. It was an absolute hit. People were coming up to him and saying, "Oh, can you do this and can you do this?" And from there, actually, he launched a business. It was actually a young entrepreneur's project that he was involved in as part of Peter Joe projects at one of the academies that he has a hand in running, and this young lad had such a good business from that platform in a healthy eating environment. He then went on to launch his business in local companies where they wanted deliveries of his products at lunchtimes. He had a website. There was online orders for what he was doing as well. So it's looking at sort of, okay, I want to do this business. I want to appeal to this market, but actually there's another market that's, where this product could do just as well in. It's good to look around and actually think, where else can I place my product? Where can I put myself that it's going to get noticed and do some good?
Yeah. Jonathan, what would be your one general tip of the week?
Well, after that one, I would say you want to make sure that you get yourself into a business with a healthy celery. But we won't go there because that's a really bad pun.
Terrible.
Yeah. So I would still say, I mean, one of the things Catherine said earlier on, really good place for a resource for getting good business background information is the Harvard Business Review, HBR. Make use of that. The last time I looked at trendwatching.com, it appears to have moved itself into the completely sort of corporate vein and wants to charge you for being able to see anything of any value, which is a shame because that was quite a nice research resource. I would suggest if you're looking for new ideas, Springwise does or used to do a weekly newsletter demonstrating new business ideas all over the world, and hopefully they'll still carry on doing that. So that, not in the corporate idiom of saying we'll only send this to you if you pay us £100 a year. The final thing I would say is if you can do research with something like SurveyMonkey for £400 a year, and you've got people helping you make sure you're asking the right sort of questions. Actually, good research for £400 a year is very, very cheap. But you do need to have help with writing the questions, and you need to have help with interpreting the answers. I think that's about it at the moment.
Yes, well, my tip is also related to this week, and that's that there are quite a few freelance market researchers out there who know what they're on about. They often have big market research company experience, and they will probably be able to help you on a much smaller budget than the marketing research that is charged to the large companies, because, as Jonathan alluded to do that kind of really in-depth countrywide type research takes an awful lot of time, effort and money, but a small independent market researcher might be able to help you ask those right kind of questions, give you the right kind of lead, and make the difference between success and failure. So look at that, and don't think, oh, you just can't afford market research. Just make sure that the budget you set for the market research is a budget that you can afford, and it's going to be with someone local probably, and realise it's going to be with someone local rather than someone who's a big, large international research company. On that note, it's time to finish. You have been watching the Marketing Gem. If you want to speak to us about any particular product subjects or any particular programs, then please get in touch with us via the Marketing Gem. And if you've got any feedback, please let us know. And I think it's time to say cheerio. I'll say cheerio on Kevin's behalf because we lost him halfway through the broadcast with the line dropping out. Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to take place. Don't forget that the previous programs are all available on YouTube, and just go into YouTube and look up the Marketing Gem, and there are probably now 15 or 16 episodes, and go back and, if you're not sure about the media audit, go back. We've spoken about what you have to do in a marketing audit, all of these things. We've covered a lot of topics and a lot of ground up already, but don't be afraid of going back and using that resource.
Yes, this is actually show 19, Jonathan.
Woo!
Okay, Catherine.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on again. Following on from Diane and Jonathan, yeah, it's been a great show today. If you want to ask us any questions at all, Diane's going to post up all the Twitter addresses at the end of this. Feel free to get in touch. We can chat about anything, whether it's anything to do with what's been on one of the shows or any questions you might have. Until next time, I shall see you next week.
Okay, and you can get in touch with each of us individually via the Twitter accounts, which will be shown on the closing credits. Anyway, on that note, thank you very much, and we hope that you've enjoyed the show and that you'll watch next week's show as well.